Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Omniman86, and today we are going to be taking a look at my haul of Deluxe Editions and Omnibus for November of 2022. All right, before we get started, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you like what you're seeing and you want to see some more, and join around. Hop in the comments, let me know what you picked up this month and what you think about any of the books that I've got. Have you read any of this stuff yet, or is it something that's on your to-buy list? So to get things started, we are going to take a look at the Deluxe Editions that I got, and these are presented in no particular order, not even by release date, just honestly, this is very similar to how I like to keep them arranged on the shelf, and that's typically by size, so you may see a lot of that, but let's jump in and take a look at what we've got for the month of November from Deluxe Editions. First up, we have Volume 2 of Adventureman. This is by Matt Fraction, Terry Dobson, and Rachel Dodson. You might recognize them. They're a husband and wife duo that do a lot of art together. They are some of the standout artists that are out there. Love their work together, and it's very iconic. You know it as soon as you see it. Clayton Cowles is on letters on this, and this is just a really, really fantastic creative team. Lots of really cool stuff happening here. This collects issues 5 through 9 of this series, originally presented in single issues and then now collected here in this kind of oversized deluxe edition, almost like a tabloid size that you have here. This retails for $24.99, so not a whole lot, but it is just a few issues. But what you get in here is just really phenomenal. So let's take a look. You've got some really fantastic artwork in here. So when you see it here kind of all spread out, this is how they intended this book to be seen, in this big oversized kind of tabloid size like we talked about earlier, and there's just some really incredible stuff going on here. The design of the book is really fantastic, and this all takes place directly after volume 1. So if you've read the first volume, this picks up right after it. Very great that it came out this time of the year, because it actually takes place at Christmas time, which is pretty cool. So again, the design of this book, I'm a sucker for a large, oversized book, and this one is just really fantastic. Matt Fraction, obviously, a really fantastic writer, so it's great to see some more creator-owned stuff from him, and then, again, the Dodsons, really fantastic artists, and so lots of really great stuff happening here. Next up is Copra by Michael Fife. This retails for $39.99 and collects issues 1 through 12 of this series. This is really interesting because this was a series that was actually published independent. This was not a part of Image Comics, who publishes the Deluxe Edition, but after those issues came out, they partnered with Image and were able to put this in this really fantastic hardcover Deluxe Edition that we've got here. And honestly, when I got this, I didn't know anything about it at all. This came as a recommendation of my local comic shop. Shout out to Heroes Aren't Hard to Find here in Charlotte, North Carolina. If you're ever in the area, go check them out. But they know me, they know my interests very well, and so they recommended this one. And the really interesting thing about this one is that it's actually kind of an independent take on the Suicide Squad. Inside, there's actually some acknowledgments for people like John Ostrander, who helped kind of bring the Suicide Squad to the forefront in DC Comics. And so the thing that got me about this is obviously the design. It's very unique in the storytelling that you see here. You see the artwork is like nothing else. It is very interesting in types of like the style that it's in, and just some of the choices they make in terms of the space on the page. Like I said, this is not something that I've ever read from before, and so I was really interested to check this out. And so you see there's lots of really interesting artwork and layouts throughout here, and so again, really creative stuff. I'm enjoying it so far. I'm probably about a quarter of the way through, and so far it's really fantastic, so go check it out. Next up, we have 2 books from TKO Comics. If you've not heard of TKO before, they have a really interesting publishing model where they put out both the single issues and the collected editions at the same time. And so you can decide how you want to collect it. If you prefer the individual floppies, you can get them, or you can just go ahead and jump in and get the collected edition. These, however, are actually reprints, and for the first time in hardcover deluxe editions. They were printed before more in these, pretty much these exact same sizes in soft cover as trades. And here, you may not have heard of the publisher before, but I guarantee you have heard of these creators. First up is Sentient by Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Walta. And then we have Sara by Garth Ennis and Steve Epting with Elizabeth Breitweiser on colors. So just a little bit about these books. Sentient follows a group of kids that are kind of drifting through space alone. Obviously, lots of opportunities for suspense and things like that as they encounter different things out in space on their ship. Really great design in this book. If you know Jeff Lemire, you know a lot of his style and how he likes to write. Gabriel Walta was the artist on Vision by Tom King. So some really great artwork going on here. And I love the design of these books. I'm also a sucker for creative things on the covers. This has this really cool kind of almost slight foil look to it. So like the eye right here is really shiny that you can see, and you can see the light reflecting off the rest of the book. And so it has this really, really great design. They both feature this kind of like half back flap here that talks a little bit about the story and what's going on. This retails for $49.99, so a little bit more than the trade was, but again, I think so worth it in this size and this format, and having this hardcover here. And then we have Sara, so by Garth Ennis and Steve Epting. This is about a group of women snipers, and Sara is their top sniper in their group. And when you look at this, you've got this cool kind of die cut out here on the cover to see this gorgeous artwork inside. Another thing that's really cool, and I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's this really nice texture to the spine and the cover of this book. So it's not just a flat kind of texture that you would normally see on these books. And again, you still have that kind of wraparound back flap there. Alan Moore actually lends a quote to this one because he and Garth Ennis obviously very close. This one also retails for $49.99. So if you're interested in picking those up, you can order those directly from TKO or find them at your local comic shop. Next, we have Ascender by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. We've got actually a few Jeff Lemire books that came out this month. Ascender is the direct sequel to Lemire's acclaimed run on Descender, and that is actually presented in two separate deluxe editions that supposedly are coming back to print very, very soon. So keep an eye out for those if you're like me that has not gotten them yet. But this is the follow-up. This takes place 10 years after the end of the Descender run. This deluxe edition collects issues 1 through 18 and retails for $49.99. If you're familiar with Dustin Nguyen's work at all, you know it is iconic and stands out just by itself. The interesting thing about this is that it takes a completely different turn from what we saw in Descender. Descender was all about technology and how it had taken over really the galaxy. And in this book, magic has now come back and taken the place of the technology. And so while it carries a lot of the themes and characters forward, along with some new characters, it's very thematically very different because it's now this mystical sci-fi as opposed to, this technologically advanced society that's dealing with robots and AI. And so again, really great design on this book. I'll give you a little peek here on the inside. You can see we've got some of that iconic Dustin Nguyen art. If you've not read any of this, hopefully I'm avoiding spoilers for you, but I'll try and flip through pretty quickly. You can see lots of really great stuff going on in here. Two really great creators, and there's just some really fantastic stuff that happens in this book. So if you've not checked out this series, definitely read Descender before you read this because it is a sequel to that, and there's a lot of things that you kind of have to have knowledge of going into it. But once you've gotten a hold of that, then this is the way to go. And then we have another book that I have not read, which is Killadelphia. This is written by Rodney Barnes and features artwork from Jason Sean Alexander and Louis Nicht. I don't know if I'm pronouncing their last name correctly, so hopefully I'm in the ballpark. But this is a horror comic. This is book 1. So this collects issues 1 through 18 of this series. I've heard really incredible things about it. This was Eisner Award nominated, and so typically when you see things nominated for that, it's a pretty safe bet to take a risk on it. And that's what I decided to do. Again, sucker for these deluxe editions, especially anything from Image Comics, and so I decided to give it a shot. I've really enjoyed some horror comics, one of my favorite we're going to talk about here in just a few moments. And I flipped it open, and some of the artwork inside just looked really incredible. Very unique. There's some stylings in here, that might kind of harken to like Raphael Albuquerque, but still very unique. I know Jason Alexander did a lot of work on the Spawn comic, and so there's a lot of inspiration from that. And so his style fits very well for another horror comic here. So I'm very interested to check this out. Again, like I said, I don't know anything about this at all. I haven't even cracked the cover yet to begin reading because I've got so many other things that I'm reading right now, but I'm very excited to get to this. Now we have Die, the deluxe edition, written by Kieran Gillen with artwork by Stephanie Hans and letters by Clayton Cowles again in this book. This is a large collected edition. You'll see it's a lot thicker than a lot of these other ones. This collects issues 1 through 20, which includes a lot of behind the scenes and special looks and essays in the back. So it's a little bit larger. This one retails for $59.99, and you can find this, online at most places. This is also published by Image Comics. This story is really fantastic. It features 6 kids who go into a role-playing game. They're actually sucked into the world of the role-playing game. If you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or anything like that before, you will be a fan of this book. But they get sucked in, and only 5 of them make it back. And then years later, they are kind of forced to return to this world, and they find out what happened to the 6th member of their group. And it just kind of spins off from there. So obviously lots of like high fantasy things that you would expect from a comic based on a role-playing game. One of the really cool things about this that I just found out recently is that this is actually being turned into a role-playing game. So pretty soon you're going to be able to get the Die RPG book to play your own tabletop version of Die. But one of the things I like about this is not only just the story, which Kieran Gillen has written a ton of really fantastic things out there, but Stephanie Hahn's artwork is really fantastic and I think lends itself really well to the story. And so I'm going to just kind of peek it open here. And so there is a lot of really great, what looks like kind of painted artwork through here. And it's just so epic, and I think it tells such a really great story through the artwork itself. The use of colors is really fantastic, and you've got some really, really big bombastic scenes in this, but also some very intimate scenes between these characters as they are working to try and find out what happened to them over the years. So lots of magic, sorcery, and things like that involved in this book. So if you've not read this yet, this is a perfect time to go check out this hardcover and add it to your collection. And then last and certainly not least, we have book 2 from Gideon Falls. This book features the creative team of Jeff Lemire yet again, Andrea Sorrentino, and Dave Stewart. This book, oh my God. I know I've talked a lot about a lot of these books. A lot of them are super great, and I would recommend them to anyone. But if you had to get just one book, this would be my recommendation. Gideon Falls is a fantastic horror series that dives into the supernatural and the suspense, a little bit of time travel, maybe a multiverse, who knows? But there's just so many great things going on here. The writing is fantastic. The art is insane. The design of this book is just crazy. You can find this for a retail price of $39.99. Features issues 17 through 27 of the series, which wraps all things up. So now you can find this in a book 1 and a book 2 to get the complete series and read it from beginning to end. And I will say that this book deserves multiple reads. There's so much to catch here, and you can see so much as you go through this. And again, if Andrea Sorrentino has done so many great things. This partnership is fantastic. They've carried this partnership over into now some other new lines of comics. But when you look at this artwork and the designs in here, I mean, you've got some really incredible stuff from these double page spreads, some things where maybe it turns upside down or it's twisting in and of itself. But so many really creepy things going on here. One of the best horror comics I think ever. And if again, look at this, look at how gross that is. That is awesome. And so if you've not read this, again, you owe it to yourself to go get this. This is my number 1 pick out of these deluxe editions, and so you should go check it out today. All right, next up, we're going to be taking a look at the omnis that I picked up in the month of November, starting with Avengers versus X-Men. This is one I've been waiting to come out for a while. I really enjoyed this series. I know it's got some mixed reviews, but I like the tie-ins that it has with House of M as kind of a follow-up to that event with some of the things that happen in here. So this collects the entire Avengers versus X-Men miniseries as well as all the tie-ins, and this actually makes this the newest, biggest Omni that I have. And actually, I think the biggest one that's available. I think in terms of page count, this is the longest Omni you can get out there now. So here I've got the standard edition cover. It comes in two different colors. You can kind of see the spine here. You know how it sits on the shelf. So it's a big chunky boy. So lots of really great artwork in here. Lots and lots of stories. You can see how big this thing is. So I'm not going to flip through here just because everything is a little different as you go throughout. You got different writers, different artists working on everything. But this is when I look at my Marvel Omnibus collection for the events, I'm really excited to be able to add this one because this is a huge Marvel event that happened, and so it's really great to be able to add that to the collection. Next up, we have The Ultimates by Mark Miller and Brian Hitch. This omnibus, again, been waiting for it to come back in print. I was so close to buying it the last time it came back into print, which was just a couple of years ago, and I didn't get it and regretted it, at that time. So I'm really glad that it's back. So this series actually provided a good bit of inspiration for a lot of what we got in the MCU with the Avengers. Obviously, the team makeup is a little bit different, but there are lots of things, whether you look at the style of the characters or some of the stories that happen, that definitely influence some of the things there, as well as the main Marvel universe. And if you're not familiar with the Ultimates, this is an alternate Marvel universe, so it's part of their multiverse. Most of what you know from Marvel is Marvel Universe 616. This one, I believe, is 1610. I could be wrong. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it's a completely different world. You get all the characters that you know. You've got Captain America, you've got Thor, Iron Man, you've got Ant-Man / Giant Man, and Wasp here. So the classic Avengers team up that we got from the very first Avengers, but obviously much more modern take on them and a kind of a retelling of what this would look like. So there's a lot of different things happening here. Some things are kind of controversial. Some people liked it, some people didn't. But again, it's a great story, and some of the things that exist in this universe do end up coming into play in the main Marvel 616 universe, especially as you get to series like Secret Wars, which will play a big role in the movies moving forward. So one thing that I like about this that I just noticed is that because of the pages, the spine itself is black. So when you look at the top and the bottom of all of this, because of the black pages that it uses, you've got a little bit different there. Obviously not something you're going to see on the shelf, but it is a little bit different. So this retails for $100. I think it's the same as the previous printing. It comes in a couple of different covers that you can get, and so you've got the spine here. And so this collects Ultimates, the entire miniseries, also Ultimates 2, and a couple of the tie-ins there. There you can find Omnis for things like Ultimate Spider-Man and then Miles Morales Spider-Man, which all come from this universe, as well as some older out-of-stock Omnis like Ultimate Avengers and things like that. So if you're interested in exploring a different take on the MCU, this is a good place to start. All right, next up we have our one single DC omnibus that I got this month, and that is Grayson, the Superspy Omnibus. This is a reprint. This is the second printing of this. This is by Tim Seeley, Tom King, and Michael Hanine, and this collects the entire Grayson series. If you're not familiar with why this series exists or how this came about, obviously it follows Dick Grayson, who at this point in the DC universe is presumed to be dead. If you've read Forever Evil, you know how that came about. That's the miniseries that kind of sets this up. But he's out on his own, and he's a secret agent in this. He's not Nightwing, he's not Robin, or any type of alias other than Agent 37. That is his secret agent code and what he goes by throughout most of this series. This is one that I read as it was coming out. Tim Seeley was probably the main writer on this, and then Tom King coming along and them doing this together. This was as Tom King was starting to become a little bit of a larger name at DC Comics after writing some of his stuff like Sheriff of Babylon with Vertigo. So this was kind of the introduction to him. Again, Michael Henin, a really great artist. And so this was where a lot of them got their start, but then went on to bigger things. Obviously, Tom King and Michael going on to Batman. And so you've got them at really the beginning of their journey with DC Comics here. And this story is really great. It's one that I didn't really appreciate initially the first time I read it. And then going back and kind of revisiting some of these stories and the storyline through this entire series. It's a really, really great read. If you're a fan of Dick Grayson, I highly, highly recommend picking this up. Dick Grayson is one of my favorite characters in the DC universe, so much so that I named my son after him, and I'm really excited this is back in print because I did not get it the first time and never did pick it up on the aftermarket. So when this was announced, I said, yes, this is for me, and here it is. And then last up for our omnibus, we have Heroes Reborn, America's Mightiest Heroes from Marvel Comics. This is a mini series by Jason Aaron. There's art from a lot of different folks in here, but Ed McGuinness was the main artist on a couple of the issues. But as you get into it, you'll see that for the mini series itself, most of the issues are drawn by a different artist for each one. This is a pretty recent event. I was kind of surprised when they solicited this because it is so recent. And it's, you typically see things like we saw Avengers versus X-Men. We have House of M coming. Some of these things that are 10 to 20 years old. But then you have this that is just a couple of years old. So this collects the main miniseries as well as all the one-shots that come along with it. And so this has the Avengers waking up in a world where they were never Avengers. And most of them never even heroes at all. And so it's about the Squadron Supreme, who are the heroes in this world. And then also the one-shots kind of follow a lot of these side characters or other heroes from the MCU that, well, not the MCU because it has nothing to do with the movies, but from the comics that don't play a pivotal role or aren't part of the main Avengers lineup here. And then you have Blade, and he's kind of the only one who knows what's happened. And if you've not read this series, why this is happening, it's kind of spoiled right here on the cover. Mephisto is a little bit involved in this. So if you are reading the Avengers current run, this might spell a couple of things that are coming up in that series, because Jason Aaron is still on his Avengers run. So this is kind of one of his first big events that he did while he was on that book. But it's a small book. You can see not as thick, especially not as thick as Avengers vs. X-Men, as you can see. It retails for $75, so it's an easy pickup. It's a pretty good story. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but it's also, not bad. Obviously, if you're familiar with Marvel events, there is another Heroes Reborn event. Obviously, this is not it because that was back from, I think, the 90s. And this is, like I said, just from a couple of years ago. So if you're looking for a more modern event, this might be a good place to start. Next, we have a book that I was really excited to get, and that is Absolute Dark Knight's Metal. This is the miniseries event at DC Comics from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Jonathan Glapion is on inks, and then FCO Placinia on colors. Before I even get into the story itself in the event, the design of this book is one of the reasons why I was so excited to get it once I started to see some images come out from this. So first you have the slipcover. If you've not seen these Absolutes before, all of the Absolutes are the books and they come inside these really cool slipcovers. They're all designed a little bit differently, but this one is probably the most unique. It has this really awesome kind of metal steel design on it. Looks like a piece of machinery that you might find in this really, really textured through here. And so you've got this really cool, you can see the spine here and might see the letters off of that a little bit depending on how the light's hitting it. But it's this really cool design that just kind of sticks out on a shelf. And it's one of these books I typically display all of my books spine out, and I have been with this one, but this is one that I could flip around to show this spine as well, and it would still look really, really cool. So that's the slipcase, and then let's take a look at the book itself. You can see you've got this kind of flat matte paper here. Everything's just kind of really shiny on it because of the way they have this printed. So you flip this over, and you've got this really cool design on the front, this art by Greg Capullo, and you can kind of see how the light reflects off of all the silver parts and makes the heroes kind of stand out. The back is the same artwork, just no logos up there, so you can see it even more. But then you've got this inside, and I'm going to pull the dust jacket off of here, you can see you've got the same inside just for the pencils, but again, in this really cool silver finish. It looks so awesome. And so this book is just, it's really cool. I love the event itself. And so this was a really great addition to the collection. If you've not read the story, this is a DC event. So this collects issues 1 through 6, which is the entire miniseries. Then it also collects 2 one-shots, Batman Lost and Dark Knight's Rising: The Wild Hunt. Those are 2 that are kind of a little more integral to the storyline itself. Which is why they included them here. But this story is actually going to be coming out in an omnibus very early next year. I think it's in January. And so if you are interested in that, you might need both. I love this story and I love the writer and the artist, and so I decided to get both. But more of the tie-ins will be included in that omnibus. But this Absolute is just really, really cool. Like I said, I love the design of it. I love the story. And so for me, this was a no-brainer. All right, this last book is really special. It's not an omnibus. It's not an absolute. It's bigger than both of them. It's the big one. This comes from a series of books that have started to be published by Taschen. You can find them online. They create lots of really cool art books, lots of cool stuff you might want on your coffee table or a shelf. They've had a relationship with Marvel before, but for the last year or so, they've been printing these books. And this is the latest version that has come out. This is the Fantastic Four. They also have the Avengers, which you can see right here. They also have Spider-Man, which I have here below it. And then they have Captain America that's going to be coming out probably towards the earlier part of next year. So this is the latest in this series that they're putting out. And there's a couple things that I want to kind of point out with this. Obviously, the size is first and foremost. So you kind of get a feel, you can kind of see the camera here, but I'm going to put up a couple things to give you an idea of like the size itself. So the first is the Absolute that we just took a look at. You can kind of see how much bigger than the Absolute that it is. And then I'll put an omnibus up in front of that so you can kind of get a feel for how they all relate to each other. So this is already considered an oversized format. This is larger than what these books are originally printed on. So this is a larger and typically a really premium format to read a lot of stories. The Absolutes are really great, these huge sizes to take a look at. And then now you have some of these books that are even bigger. And this Taschen Fantastic Four is one of those. So this collects a lot of the first Fantastic Four stories. This one has 1 through 19 and then annual number 1. So if you've been interested in any of the Fantastic Four stories from the 60s, this is a really great place to look. I would say, if you've never read the stories before, you may not want to jump in and get this particular book because this thing retails for $200. They are limited edition. They are numbered. This is actually a really low print, which I was pretty happy about. You can see this nice big spine here. The one thing I don't get is I don't understand why they chose green for the color. The color green is not typically associated with the Fantastic Four, and so I expected blue. And so I don't know. I guess they're saving blue for Captain America, maybe. But that threw me off. But again, it's really cool, and it's got this nice fabric feel to the cover itself. You can see the back cover is issue 19, which has Ramatut, which if you're familiar with the story of Kang, is one of his variants. So lots of stuff laying the groundwork for these early Marvel comic stories. And then inside, you get some really cool stuff. In addition to all the stories themselves, there are a lot of bonus features. So in the front, I'm going to try and open this up, even though this is a very unwieldy. You've got some kind of artwork here. You have some essays and stories. There's an introduction from Mark Waid here. This is very, very thick, kind of like a little bit of a gloss, a semi-gloss paper. But then once you get to the actual issues themselves, it's recreated on the actual type of paper they would have used for these comics. So this is, like a very thick, almost like newspaper type material, very flat, as you can see. And this is intended to be a reproduction of how it would have looked off the stand when you would have gotten this, back in the 60s when this was coming out. And so this is part of the appeal of this, is not only is it, reprinting these stories, but you can find that in an omnibus, you can find it in a trade or a epic collection, all that kind of stuff. But they really went out of their way to try to recreate this as much as possible like the original printing. And one of the great things that I love about this, and probably another reason I'm excited about it, is that for the Fantastic Four, for the Avengers, and for Spider-Man, they scanned the comics of a collector. The collector's name is Shelton Drum. He owns a comic book shop called Heroes Aren't Hard to Find here in Charlotte, North Carolina. That is my local comic book shop. And it talks about this in the back in the acknowledgments. But he owns a collection of comics that are in such great shape that Marvel actually had to scan his comics in order to recreate these. And so they were able to get these really, really high quality scans and put together these beautiful books. They do have like ribbons. You can see the one down here from Avengers, so that way if you're reading it, you can put that in it. But they're just gorgeous reproductions of these early stories. And so even if these stories aren't your favorite, if you are a collector of Marvel Comics, especially in oversized hardcover collected editions, this is a beautiful book. I will say there is another version of this that's an even more limited edition that is $600 for each of these. It has a slipcase and a couple of other features in terms of like the quality of the printing. That's a little bit too rich for me. So the $200 one for me is like the way to go. But again, really, really beautiful books. If you're a collector, it's one of those things that is a really, really awesome add to your collection. And with that, that's my collection for the month of November. If you've not already, drop a like if you enjoyed the content. If you have any questions, drop a comment down below, and then subscribe. I'm going to have some more videos coming, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great day.